What would you do if your name became a liability? If the very title that defined you for decades suddenly poisoned every door you tried to open? Because Sarah Ferguson isn't just facing financial ruin. She's facing something far worse, the erasure of her own identity. Behind the palace walls, a woman who once commanded respect in the highest circles of European royalty is now considering something almost unthinkable, becoming a ghost. Writing under a fake name, publishing novels under a pseudonym, erasing Sarah Ferguson entirely from the professional world, just to survive. But here's what the palace doesn't want you to know. This isn't desperation born from a single scandal. This is the final act of a decades-long pattern of exploitation, reinvention, and the slow dissolution of a woman who built her entire existence on a borrowed title. Do you think the palace quietly orchestrated her fall, or did they simply let it happen? Before we unlock the classified files of this royal collapse, like this video and subscribe, because what happens next will redefine everything you thought you knew about the inner workings of the monarchy. Turn on notifications. This story goes deeper than anyone has publicly admitted. Let's establish the public narrative first. Sarah Ferguson married Prince Andrew in 1986. For a brief, glittering moment, she was the Duchess of York. Vivacious, modern, the people's princess in waiting. Then came 1992, those photographs, the toe-sucking scandal that shattered her royal position in a single humiliating moment. But here's what the history books conveniently omit. Sarah never actually left public life. She simply transformed. Weight Watchers spokeswoman, children's book author, media personality, product lines, charity patron. Every reinvention was calculated. Every comeback was strategic. The palace watched. They remained silent. For 30 years, they allowed her to exist in a profitable limbo, dismissed enough to maintain plausible deniability, yet famous enough to generate headlines and income. She was useful, expendable, and controllable, until Jeffrey Epstein changed everything. But was the palace's silence protective or complicit? The Supreme Friend emails. In 2010, emails surfaced. Sarah Ferguson had referred to Jeffrey Epstein as her supreme friend, not a contact, not an acquaintance. Supreme friend. Two words that carried devastating intimacy. The palace response was immediate and calculated: fear. She was terrified of Epstein, they claimed, coerced into those letters, protecting herself from legal threats. But here's the part that was buried in secondary reporting. If Sarah was genuinely frightened of someone threatening her with lawsuits, would she call them her supreme friend? That's not the language of coercion. That's not the vocabulary of someone under duress. That's the language of genuine connection. Suddenly, the narrative cracked open, not because of what she wrote, but because of what her defense revealed about how she actually communicates. She wasn't scared, she was aligned. And here's the question the media never asked: who else knew about this relationship and how long? The simultaneous collapse. Within weeks of the Epstein connection becoming public, everything collapsed at once. 7 charities severed ties simultaneously. Not gradually, not one by one. 7 organizations coordinated departure. Her latest children's book was shelved indefinitely. Her home at Royal Lodge, the residence she'd occupied since 2008, the last remaining symbol of her royal status, was now being stripped away. But this is the detail that needs investigation. These weren't random acts of institutional abandonment. This was orchestrated removal. The timing was too synchronized. The decisions were too uniform. Someone, somewhere, had quietly made a call. A signal was sent through the palace network. And every institution connected to Sarah Ferguson received the same message: distance yourself. Do you think this was a spontaneous public response or a coordinated palace-led purge? The financial trap. Sarah Ferguson never learned to live within her means. That's not speculation, it's documented historical fact. For decades, she spent beyond her income. And somehow, mysteriously, her debts were always quietly absorbed. During her darkest financial moments, the palace made certain arrangements. Money flowed in from unexpected sources, debts disappeared, crisis averted. But those days are over. Now, with no book deals, no charity income, and no palace financial safety net, Sarah is facing something she's never truly confronted: the reality of her own expendability. The money is gone. The institutional protection is gone. The doors that once opened for her are sealed. So she's devising a plan that reveals how desperately cornered she actually is, become someone else. And here's what makes this strategy so revealing. She's not trying to rehabilitate Sarah Ferguson. She's trying to escape her entirely. The Pseudonym Project publishing insiders report that Sarah Ferguson is considering writing adult fiction under a fake name. Not just fiction, deliberately provocative material. The kind that requires edge. The kind that sells through anonymity rather than reputation. This isn't a business strategy. This is psychological erasure. Under her own name, her Epstein connection dominates every conversation. Every review mentions the scandal. Every potential publisher faces institutional pressure. Bookstores hesitate. The market is closed. But if she disappears behind a pseudonym, she could theoretically build a readership before her identity emerges. She could generate income without public visibility. She could exist as an author without existing as Sarah Ferguson. It's calculated, it's desperate, and it reveals the depth of her psychological break from her former identity. But the real question is, can someone with Sarah's history of oversharing, of boundary crossing, of seeking attention, actually maintain secrecy? The pattern nobody wants to admit. Here's what royal author Christopher Wilson documented. Someone who worked closely with Sarah Ferguson described her as greedy, grabby, and grubby. Not allegations, not rumors. A direct character assessment from someone embedded in her professional circle. She will take everything, then bite your hand off to get the rings as well. This isn't merely a personality flaw. This is a pattern that explains her entire career trajectory. Every business partnership eventually fractured because Sarah extracted maximum value and demanded more. Every publishing deal was renegotiated. Every charity connection eventually reached a breaking point because people who worked with her felt exploited and used. The palace was no exception. For 30 years, they tolerated her because she was manageable. But the moment she became a liability rather than an asset, the moment the Epstein connection threatened the institution itself, they withdrew. Completely, strategically, quietly. And Sarah, unable to fathom that her leverage had finally evaporated, is now attempting one final reinvention, her most desperate move yet. The consequences have been total. She's lost her home, she's lost her income streams, she's lost her charity positions. Most devastatingly, she's lost the very thing that made her valuable: access to the monarchy. The title that once opened every door is now radioactive. But the real damage isn't material, it's existential. Sarah Ferguson spent 4 decades building an identity around borrowed royal status. Every business venture was anchored to Duchess. Every book was marketed through former royal. Every media appearance traded on proximity to the crown. That proximity is now toxic. Inside the palace, the narrative is already calcified. Sarah was peripheral. Andrew was the real liability. She was collateral damage, expendable. Within royal circles, she's being quietly erased from institutional memory. Not publicly condemned, that would create headlines. Simply forgotten, mentioned less, included in fewer conversations, invited to fewer events. It's the slow death of social relevance, and it's devastating. And yet, silence remains the most unsettling answer of all. The palace has never publicly addressed Sarah's Epstein connection directly. No statement, no clarification, no institutional defense, just absence. Just the erasure of a woman who once stood beside princes, now reduced to considering a secret identity just to publish novels. This isn't just about Sarah Ferguson's fall from grace. This is about how institutions protect themselves by disappearing people, how loyalty is measured and then revoked, how proximity to power becomes proximity to danger. Because when the palace decided Sarah Ferguson was no longer useful, they didn't just distance themselves. They coordinated her removal from every institution simultaneously. They ensured that every door closed at once. They made certain that rehabilitation would be impossible. It was clinical. It was thorough. It was institutional. After everything you've heard, which part shocked you the most? The Epstein connection, the coordinated palace purge, or the fact that a former duchess might now be writing anonymous novels just to survive? Drop your answer in the comments. Share this video because the palace counts on your silence. Stay tuned because the next royal file may be even darker than this one.